Hello. Well, I am truly delighted to introduce our keynote speaker. United CEO Oscar Muoz took the helm of the airline just over 2 years ago after some trying years in the merger between United and Continental. Previously, Oscar's held several executive positions at CSX Transportation and a few little companies like AT&T, US West, and Coca-Cola. Since taking over at United, employee sentiment at the airline has hit an all-time high since Glassdoor began tracking data. This is super exciting. This is probably one of the biggest turnarounds of employee sentiment at scale that I have ever seen. And I'm really excited to talk to Oscar about how he's pulling this off. This has remained strong even through the really challenging time that United had over the removal of a passenger in April. In July, Oscar was recognized as one of the highest rated CEOs at Glassdoor, currently at a 94% approval rating from his workforce. Again, nearly unheard of for an airline. Before we welcome Oscar on stage, I'd like to share a short video United has shared with us. So without further ado.
It's early Sunday morning, September 3rd on Labor Day weekend. I just landed here in Houston. I just wanted to come and connect and thank all our great employees. We've had hundreds and hundreds of people from all over the system arrive into Houston to do the same thing. And I'm here to say thank you and see how much more we can do to assist, both as a company and as individuals. So we waved this for the helicopters, actually, and they were able to see it.
I was doing like this, please see me, and they did.
I've learned that how you support people and how they feel the support makes a big impact on how you recover from it. Because this will get rebuilt, right? And you can do the physical things. It's the things you lost, it's the emotional impact that you went through. That only gets cleared up by, all of us feeling like someone cares for us.
I'm safe, I got me, I got my cat out, and I've got my United family, which has been absolutely wonderful.
It looked really pretty before. It is really, really heartbreaking.
It's pretty powerful to see the community and my coworkers and my church members rally to the extent that they have. When you start talking about United, I've seen this on the side of our airplanes, and it's been nothing but a word stenciled on an airplane. But this is what it means. When everything goes wrong, and everybody comes together to make your life better, it's made me feel different about the place I work. And I'm sorry to be so emotional, but it's because of them.
God bless you, man.
Ladies and gentlemen, please help me in providing a warm welcome to United CEO Oscar Muoz.
Hello.
All right, thank you. That's incredibly moving. So Houston's a huge hub for United.
It is.
And I know this
Can I say something? I wish the world, and it will eventually, see our company and our people in the light that you just saw them. Because that emotion, that raw connection is what is United. And that video is infinitely better than another video that was released a few months ago. And plus, I'm realizing I'm losing my hair in the back of my head, and I hate that. So I thought I'd soften the mood before we get too overly dramatic, because we do this as a natural cause. There's so many incredible heroic acts that our people do with customers every single day, every single hour across the globe. And a lot of you that travel see some of that, and they also see the failures. And unfortunately, it's the latter that usually gets more recognized. And that's just the fate that we have to deal with. But that's what keeps me coming back to work every day.
Yeah. You personally are donating up to $1 million to support this. And this was such an important hub for United. So many people were affected. Tell me about just like, what was going through your mind as this was happening and you were trying to figure out basically how to marshal the resources to come to bear on this?
You know, that's the easy part about this business and this company and these folks. There's nothing to marshal. It's an immediate, trained response that we help people. We help our own and we help the communities around us, and it's just a natural instinct. And you know, any donation from someone like me is meaningless compared to the incredible large amount of smaller but more significant gestures. Because what you also saw in the video, you didn't really see it, all those people around there helping each other out, they also had impact, but found the time and the will to go and help someone else that was in more need than not. And that's the foundation for it. So money is one thing because it's an economic aspect, but I've learned that picking up what is seemingly a small, throw rug that's soaking wet, it's about 300 pounds of weight that you have to work through. Yeah. But it's those little things that have mattered. So it was being there and all our teams, and the humanitarian efforts that we did. We flew a ton of flights. FEMA's still in one of our hangars in Houston as their launching point for all of their activity. So it's a natural act. It's not a marshaling, which is what's wonderful. It's like how and when we do it. My only instinct was knowing people and knowing humans that have been affected. It's the first thing they need to know is that they don't have to come to work and that they will be paid. Just little things that matter that I don't have to worry about. Outreach is coming. We had FEMA experts that we hired to bring in so that they could answer questions about how to apply, so for insurance proceeds and such. So it's empathy and understanding of what people might need, and providing that, I think, was a critical force. But again, it's an immediate response for us.
So Oscar, I think...
No.
So Oscar, one of the things that you've been described as is the compassionate CEO, and an attempt to bring compassion to a job at a scale that has rarely been seen. Does that mantle fit? Does it feel right? And where does that come from? Were you raised that way? Was it?
Yeah, I had 9 kids in my family. I was the older. We fought for everything in our household, and you learn to get along with folks and sharing. And so now, listen, the foundation for my parents, my grandparents, was always around treating people around you like you would treat yourself, and all of those wonderful sort of things that people hear about. I truly believe them. It's truly who I am. I've had great mentors along the way that have taken the time to spend a little time and focus and direct you. I've learned the term that sharing is caring, and that's a fundamental philosophy I do, because if you allow people to openly share with you and you give them that trust that there's something there for them, they will share a lot of things. Not always positive things, but it's the way to learn. And so, it is compassionate. Being a CEO, I have to build a company that's not only principled in nature, but it also has to be profitable. And you have to do both those things. And you'll hear me today talk mostly about the soft aspects of our business, but there's a very competitive dynamic that we have to be in the marketplace, and we have to make tough decisions. And when you make those tough decisions, if you don't have that goodwill built up with your employees when you have to make tough decisions, however it might affect them, they give you a lot of leeway. And I think compassionate is one word. Principled and profitable as a company is probably the broader term that we're trying to achieve.
Powerful, thank you. So one thing that many of you may not know is about 1 month into your new job, you had a massive heart attack and you nearly died. And in fact, that ultimately led to a heart transplant. And
Don't I look good? Sitting here is looking good. It's like, look how I look.
You surprised analysts by appearing on a United quarterly earnings call when they were not expecting you to be there. I have to believe that event shaped you and your leadership, and I was wondering if you could talk just a little bit about that.
I think if you ask anybody that knew me before, I don't think I've changed much. I'm not as active as I used to be. I used to, run marathons, and I was a vegan for a while. I don't recommend that. But it does shape, I think, the developing environment in our company. I think probably it's a broad story full of miracles, and at some point in time, if we had time, I would tell you all the incredible things that have happened in my life. But I know so I got sick, and then I was out for a little while figuring out what I had to do next. And really the option is when you have an event like that is either you go on medications for the rest of your life and just sort of slow your roll for a long time, or you go for it and you get a transplant. And the concept of a transplant was a little scary for me. So it took me a while to get used to it, but the option didn't exist for me. So while we were waiting for the transplant, I went back to work. I was doing a whole host of different things, visiting employees. I had this device in me that wasn't very, well, it was unwieldy, to say the least, that kept my heart pumping. In the midst of that, I decided to have our strategy retreat where the senior leaders of our company.
Because why not?
Yeah, well, it was the start of the year, and that's when you do strategy reviews. And again, part of our mental makeup of a lot of us is that nothing can get us down, so I'm ready to go back to work at any point in time. My doctors felt otherwise. So we had the strategy session, and again, this is an interim period where I'm waiting, I'm on a transplant list, and nobody can know about that. I mean, the public scrutiny on my health initially was pretty vicious and ugly, and involved my family, and all those things that are just negative in nature. So we're kind of keeping it quiet. And on the day of my birthday, we're at the strategy review, and it's the second day, and the second morning is when really it's going to culminate in what the decision about what we're going to do as a company. And that morning before that meeting, I get a call from my doctor, and he says, "Have I got a kick-ass heart for you?" And that's a quote. And this is a relatively bespectacled, he's a very doctorish looking gentleman, not prone to a lot of emotion. And they tell me I'm the only one that makes him smile, which is great. But he was so excited about that. And so I said, "All right, so what do I do?" And he goes, "Well, relax for a little while. You don't have to come into this afternoon." So I hung up the phone, and my wife and I were sitting there, and we hugged and said a little prayer. And I said, "All right, well, I'll be back. I got to go to work." Figured what not. And so interesting, in that morning, the team decided that our first North Star value objective was that we needed to regain the trust of our employees before we could do anything else. Because over the time, they had become disengaged, disenfranchised, and we could not invest enough, we could not train enough, we could not provide enough incredible, intelligent, strategic efforts. We had to regain the hearts and minds of these folks, their discretionary effort and their ability. And so that morning, the team rallied around the fact, a very simple thing, that we're gonna go out and regain trust, which was, I think, a magic moment for me. And so around lunchtime when we broke for lunch, I said, "So, hey, just a quick announcement. I got to go. Something's going on at the hospital that I've been waiting for." And so inadvertently, I said, "I'll see you on the other side." And if you think about that term with what can happen when you go into major surgery, which other side? So, ladies and gentlemen, I'm glad to be on this other side. So I'm sorry. No, so it did shape me in that regard, that the support from our family, our United family, was incredible. And so just real quick, bags of mail would arrive at the hospital every morning while I was in the hospital. Bags. And the assorted flowers and candy and barbecue and jambalaya and all sorts of things. It was great. But it came to the point where my family would open that bag of mail and read from it, because I really wasn't in a mood or could read. And so every morning became what they called the morning reading. And it was great. And it was so emotional for my kids and my wife to read the respect that was being shown, and thoughtfulness and prayers from the United family. And again, that's what's shaping me and my efforts and focus. It's what shapes everything I've done, good or bad. I know that the foundation of our company is this incredible group of human beings that would do anything for each other. And my job is to do everything for them as well, so that they can treat you as customers as well as they can.
Yeah.
Sorry, that was a long commercial.
So everything you're describing, we could see in the Glassdoor data. We saw for many, many years, United, even pre-merger, was being rated, employee satisfaction was being rated as a 1 or a 2 on a scale of 5. People were pretty unhappy. Even post-merger, they were relatively unhappy. Under your leadership, that began to change very rapidly, and now sits at a 3.9 average. Again, I'm not using hyperbole when I say with 90,000 employees, this is one of the biggest cultural transformations I've seen ever. Your approval rating sits at 94% from your employees. How did you, and it does feel like it was trust regained, and it was like momentum harnessed. How did you do it, like tactically? Like, what did you do?
This won't, this won't impress anyone. It's funny how effort, work, turnarounds work. A lot of people will stand in stages like this and describe the incredible level of intelligence and thoughtfulness and tactical direction and stuff. I did something really stupid, simple. I just stopped and listened. And I listened intently. I went everywhere in our system. Before I got sick, 37 days, and I think I was in the office 2 of those. And I touched every break room, every place I could go in an airport, all over the country. And I listened. Because it's important to really build a level of trust where people will talk. Remember, sharing is caring. And then the important part after that is, after you listen, then you got to learn from what you heard. And then listen again. It's a nice little vicious cycle that you have to go back. Because you go hear things, and then you interpret them, and then you go back and say, here's what I heard, and that's the learning process. Listen, learn, and then kind of dot, with a big and then lead. It's so important for a large corporation of fragmented people all over the world that it's easy to figure out or think that you're so smart that you know what's wrong, and you go fix that. And it's an amazing aspect. You go fix something, you spend all this money, and everybody's like, you know, dude, I wanted my oil change. Why did you give me new tires? And that's a stupid analog, but that's the concept. And so when they know that they've provided input and you've listened and learned from it and provided the feedback and the trust, it makes a massive difference in the simple thing that I need in our business, human interaction, human connection, regaining that trust and their discretionary effort, because it felt personal to them that somebody was actually caring for them and their needs and listening. And so that was the foundation, and it started with the initial letter I wrote before I had even arrived, which made a big impact immediately, and then it just went on from the listening, which is what led to the wonderful level of support while I was sick and so on. And from that, we've built a pretty good dynamic that you see hopefully when you travel. I mean, when you guys go back, for those of you traveling, you know, if you're flying on us, hopefully, you know, ask anyone you meet. Hey, I was just at an event that I saw Oscar. And it's not about me, but they'll tell you mostly how excited they are about the future of the company, how they feel, all of the things that we want personally to feel. So at the end of the day, Robert, it's about, again, how do, you know, at my level, no one gives you accolades. No one pats you on the back. It's always, what have you done wrong? And the street's always commenting. But that's my job. For the people that are on our front line, just a little simple thank you, or at least an understanding that somebody out there cares, I think has been the foundation. And then importantly, you've got to provide proof, not just promises. You can just say, oh, listen, I listened to you, we're going to eventually do this. No, you start delivering proof immediately so they feel it, see it. And one of the first things that we did is our contracts, our labor contracts, as expensive as they are, had been held up for so long. And people were just, you know, this is a technical term, pissed beyond belief. And it's hard to engender any kind of trust when you ain't paid me. And you can argue about the level of pays and unions and rules and all that stuff. It's like, not important. In a human dynamic, if they feel they're underpaid, you're never going to get them. And it was important. There's so much hidden inefficiency when somebody is not connected. And the proof point is, especially with Wall Street, they want to know, how much is that worth? If you're going to invest $1 billion, what's the return? You can't measure human dynamic in that way, and it's frustrating for the street to do that. But you roll forward a year later, our operational metrics are leading the country. That's the return on level of human engagement. So compassionate, yes, but principled, of course. Business orientation always has to have that piece of it. And our employees understand that, as long as they know that you've got their back in certain areas.
Fascinating. So a huge gamble that this would pay off. And so listen, engage, and deliver.
Listen, learn, and lead, in my word, but you know, you're the one.
Yeah, I mean, it's fascinating. It's interesting. I'm kind of, yeah, I haven't seen it done
but
at
again,
this scale
it's the
before.
simplest thing, and everybody goes, oh yeah, let me write that down. I'm telling you, doing it, finding candidates, finding leaders as you recruit and work through all these things that actually can live that, it's a very different world.
That's what I began to think, is you had to drive this down, because it couldn't be just you. You had to drive it down into your executive team, to all the levels of management that had to learn to operate this way. And it happened so relatively quickly.
No.
So anyway, I'll stop harping on that. I find it fascinating. So, all right, in April, There was obviously a very public reaction to the passenger that was removed from the plane. Public opinion was certainly rattled. It got a lot of unfortunate negative press. We could see internally at Glassdoor that employee sentiment did not really change. We were watching the data series come in, and it still stayed at pretty high levels. There was a little wobble, but not a big response from employees. And you're on the record about United's response and the incidents, but I'm curious to hear about how did you navigate this internally? Because from the outside, it looks like United stayed together as a team somehow through that with this intense pressure on everyone.
That was the simple objective. You know, these things happen so quick, and you just heard a little bit of the story, the backdrop, and what we've done to regain trust with our employees, and trusting them and us, and them trusting us. For me, other than the horrific incident that it was, and fixing the things that got to it, there were so many facts that nobody knows about. Particularly the fact that there was really only one actual United employee involved in that whole situation. And so I think the initial gaffe, which I own, about how we responded, was trying to figure out all the different facts and how we articulated to the world, the specific. Well, what I learned quickly and learned the hard way, no one gives a crap about facts in that matter. There was an incident, there was a video, you're attached to it, you've got to make it right. So we learned that. So the first response was awful. The second one was a little bit about supporting our employees, because again, for me, the objective is I cannot lose these folks. As much as people wanted me to potentially blame other people, another airline, the police department, all of those things, it's like I couldn't do it because, again, in my heart of hearts, and I know in 90,000 people that are employed with us, in their heart of hearts, if once they see someone who they think highly of, in my case, me, if they see them in a tough moment, giving up on their principles and start to blame somebody else, as right as that might have been to some people, or the desire because the intense scrutiny, I think you start getting at the root and the heart of someone's true principles, right, in the heart of something really challenging, and I could not let that happen. So I had to support our employees despite the intense, massive, ugly scrutiny that we got because of that. How dare he, support his employees in this case? It's like it wasn't them. It was policies and principles that got in the way of doing the right thing. And those policies and principles I own, my company owns, my people own, and we're going to fix those. And we quickly bifurcated and got past that. So emotion lingers, nice little stabs from the media, and it's a fun thing to make a joke of. But we kind of turn the other cheek and keep doing what we do best, which is delivering great operational efficiency and a great airline to fly.
That is very inspiring. That does make someone want to work for a CEO like that. So that's interesting.
And we don't have any problem recruiting. That's for sure.
I've already got a job. At this conference, but I do seriously find that it is a great piece of advice
Global
to
travel.
leaders.
I
I did do 10 years at Expedia. At this conference, we're talking about informed candidates and them knowing, what they need to know to work at your company. So if you could sit down with a candidate today and make sure that they know 3 things about United, what would they be? Or just even a couple things that they need to know about United versus other airlines or versus other big employers in Chicago?
Yeah, it's an exciting industry. I swear to goodness, it is. It touches politics, business, community, global politics. For an exciting, a person that's looking for an exciting role that touches all those things, this is a great place. It's very intellectually challenging. The logistics and algorithms required to get your aircraft at that right place with the crew and all of those passengers on board is an amazing process. So the intellect is there as well. And, as I mentioned earlier, you get to travel the world. And so those combinations, millennials, to some degree, want to see the humanity and the principled nature of a company, and I think we show that in spades. But I don't brand that. I think people do that on their own, which is something like your company is so wonderful, right? People get their own sense of what a company's like from others, as opposed to me telling you, hey, we're a really principled company. You see it in our actions, which is critically important. But it's an exciting place, and the United brand has such a global nature and aspect, and I've learned that from my role. I can go almost to any country and get an audience with the president of the country. I mean, we connect people and unite the world is our shared purpose. And it's interesting because when you go outside of this country, having a large American global brand like us show up, makes a big difference. So there's a lot that comes with it. Now, when you work for an airline, you get both sides. You know, you get the good side, and then you get at every cocktail party, social gathering you have, somebody wants to give you a tidbit about how you best can improve your service, because all of you are renowned experts in travel. And so you always want to tell, and it's great what people say. It goes from the inane to profane to some degree sometimes, because people, you know, they want more, they want less. I keep a little running, I brought this real quickly, a little running, sort of daily, weekly total. It's just the volume of calls that come to my email and my source, because everybody likes to call me, because my whole team of 90,000 people are taught that if they get into a really sticky situation, it's like, hey, call Oscar, and he'll fix it. And that's what they, and we don't fix everything, but it has all the different things. So I get a nice little pulse of things as to what's going on, what's going right, the difference between complaints and compliments, and it's brilliant watching this over time, how it's shifted so much. And the things I get are sometimes pretty funny. A cheese guy who was very insulted at, I think his term was, your cheese plate in first class serving is deplorable. Oh, no, it gets better. And it's like, so immediately you're thinking, well, what does that mean? It's like, well, everybody knows, he said, everybody knows that you should never serve camembert and brie next to each other.
Duh.
Of course, right? But you get some of those things, and so the customer's a wonderful group, and we listen to all of them. Some are harder to fix than others.
That's cool. All right. Well. So a lot of people here are responsible for talent and recruiting practices. As part of this metamorphosis that you're taking United through, are you having to change the hiring and recruiting practices to try and align with this? How is it changing?
Yes. So there's a combination of we're growing, so we're hiring. And we have an interesting demographic that we have a lot of folks that have been here 30 to 40 years. And you think, well, they're going to retire soon, right? Not. So back to the disenchantment and disenfranchised nature of it, a lot of people in the airline industry who have been working that long are working here because they have to. They can't fiscally retire. They've lost their pensions, they've lost all their savings in bankruptcies, so they're working because they have to. Now, you talk about a workforce that's difficult to motivate. I've been here 30, 40 years. I don't want to be here. I have to because I can't afford to quit. And so I'm just going to last out for another 10 years. Motivating and energizing that workforce. So the challenge and what we've done is infinitely, when someone writes a book about this, be infinitely more acute and impressive because of the nature of 70% of our folks have been here over 15 years, and an even higher amount. And so you have that nature. So how do you work with them? So I need to keep them here. They want buyouts. They want to leave. And again, back to building goodwill. My concept on buyouts was simple. It's like, you know what? We're not going to do it. We're growing, and we need your experience and capability. But I'll promise you this: if indeed we decide on a buyout for a subsequent 3 years after you make your formal decision, we'll give you your money. So if you need to retire and want to retire, but you're not because you heard the rumor that we may be doing a large buyout next year, don't worry about that. We'll make you whole if we need to. And again, it's just empathy and understanding for people that want to do that. The new folks are just an immense amount of folks that we have to get. And so
let me make sure I understand that. So you essentially gave them permission to leave and you'd make them whole.
If indeed we had a buyout.
Got it. So if they were hanging around waiting for a buyout, you said, we'll make you whole so basically, if you don't want to be here, we're going to try and make it so that we aren't here. So we're going to get the right people in. Okay, interesting.
No, it was just a simple solution and everybody was like, okay, he said no, but he said no with something positive for me. Imagine, back to human, you've been here 30, 40 years, you're working because you have to. You heard that there might be it's an impossible thing, so we work there. So we are hiring. So how it's changed our hiring practice, so our customer orientation, the kind of folks that we're looking for, there's going to be less of a profile. Our interviewing process is going to change significantly. There's a whole range of things that I won't talk about today about how we're going to have experts in certain areas, and I've learned from the tech world, I've learned from people around about how best to hire, but we have to hire for attitude, because customer service, again, is not a matter of policies and principles. It's about human values, and if you don't fundamentally love people and love serving, it's not going to work. because you have to turn the other cheek all the time in this regard. And so it's an exciting practice, and we hire thousands of people every year, and so it's not an easy task.
Anybody that's dealt with a gate agent has seen the turning of the other cheek. They're the most abused people on the planet, I think.
By the way, they're my latest focus. I just went through a whole big listening tour again and saw hundreds of them, and we're about to release the results of that. So we've listened, we've learned, and then we've implemented certain things that came directly from them. And when you hear their concerns and issues about how they have to manage and work, it's awful.
It is interesting. You know, there's a special kind of rudeness that I think people reserve for gate agents, that they trot out when they're really unhappy that they can't get on their flight or something.
No, my email box may counter that sometimes.
Yeah. It is. I am fascinated by their ability to just absorb it. What was your first job, and what were the lessons you took from it? Do you remember? Do you think back?
Oh gosh, I had so many sort of side jobs. You know, like most of us in the room, right? It's a great, by the way, a cocktail sort of dinner, sort of questions. Like, hey, everybody talk about your first job. And I had some really gritty jobs, you know, just plain blue collar, degreasing vehicle stalls. Cleaning, probably the worst one was the Oscar Mayer Wiener factory in South Central LA, scraping up. I have not eaten a hot dog since. Really? The bits and pieces. And I think, you know, the takeaway for me from it's important, I do this with my kids, it's like you got to understand what people do for a living in this world. Because it's not all, you know, our kids generally tend to live in a bubble. Everybody goes to college. Everybody gets these jobs but the majority of our world does not do that, can't do that, doesn't have access to that, which is why I'm a big proponent of education, early education in particular, and I do a lot in my foundation. But I think you learn empathy, you learn understanding, you learn compassion, and you learn very much, especially with my frontline folks, is that they're just normal human beings trying to earn a buck and trying to make sure you're happy. And the combination of all those things, it's somebody caring for them. So you'll see me in airports all the time. I just sit down and talk with people and actually have a meaningful conversation about their families and their lives. And all of us as humans crave that little bit of attention. And I'm in a position, I'm blessed to be in this position, miracle that I'm here and all of that. But when someone like me can provide that level of comfort and connection, I think it means a lot to a human. And I hope that transfers to you as a customer.
Very inspiring. All right, so we're going to go to some of your questions. We've got a microphone here around the room, two of them around the room. We'd love to hear what you guys have. We would like to ask Oscar.
Somewhere out there in the middle.
We've got here, we've got there.
Sure. Actually, we're going to kick it off, with just one from the live stream while we bring a mic over to this individual over here in the room. So Oscar, I have a great question for you live from Twitter. Bridget is wondering, what's your perspective on the role of CEOs in speaking out about social, political, or cultural issues?
My personal view is I'm going to take my platform and run with it, and damn the torpedoes. People around me are going to warn me against that. It's a difficult balance because we're often, and I'm headed to DC as we speak, to talk with lawmakers, and you know, administrations tend to make decisions that don't always align with a lot of people's views. A lot of people that work in our company, we have an incredibly diverse group of human beings that come from all countries in the world and have all had immigrant issues, for instance, and are immigrants themselves. And so for me, because being a Latino and having grown up and experienced the bias, it's very personal to me. But I have to separate my personal views and the views of my company. I cannot express them too loudly because of the fear that something might happen to the company because of that. But at the same time, it's difficult to be silent. And I wrote a LinkedIn post just a little while, and I think one of my commentaries was like, listen, this isn't United Airlines CEO speaking. This is just, you know, a simple guy who's an immigrant, who's grown up and had all the incredible blessings of this country offers. But because I can speak, I want to speak for those that can't. It's a balance to the person on Twitter. Clearly, we can imbalance that sometimes. We can hide behind that as CEOs. I choose not to, and I choose not to in a balanced way that does. And again, it's not about speaking. I have a pulpit, but I need to use it wisely. But it's not going to refrain me from making the right commentary.
It is tricky.
Thank you so much. We have a question right over here.
Yeah, I just had a question. I was wondering what your internal philosophy is on addressing negative comments or complaints that you mentioned earlier, like for yourself, your leadership team, your...
I welcome them. I embrace them with the biggest open arms you could possibly imagine. It's the only way you learn. But you do have to be wise about how you do that because the volume is so of such magnitude and the content is so scattered around so many avenues that it's difficult to be actionable. Somebody's plane is late because they have a dinner date with their friends tonight, and someone is late because they're going to a funeral, right? Those are two different issues. How do you respond to each one of them? So I put behavioral scientists and the people that help me respond to mine so that we understand the human connection and empathy. But more importantly, it's creating an environment that my employees, my customers know that if they reach out to us, that there's going to be a response that isn't this template. Now, if you called us recently and you've gotten a template, I apologize. We're working on all of that because we get millions and millions of calls every day on various things. But to your very core question, I welcome it. I read my emails at night. I'll pick 3 or 4 because I can't read them all, and sometimes you just see one that just makes an impact. And sometimes we really foul up people's lives, and when we break it, we fix it. And it's important for me to stay involved as opposed to sort of farm it out to a bunch of folks so that they know kind of what would Oscar do, so to speak. And it's not just about giving people what they want. It's just about listening to them. Some people just, hey, you dropped your coffee on my computer. And we respond, well, thank you for flying United. And United, we always try to do this. And if you take your thing, and then we tell you to go take your computer to some repair shop and get a bill and this stuff. We killed the whole luggage thing, right? If we lost your luggage, we made you find receipts for your underwear and your socks and your toothpaste. We said, no, if we lose it, you've trusted us with your luggage and we lost it, there's nothing for you to do other than us to make you whole. Here's $1,500. And if it's more than that, because it's amazing what people's underwear and socks and toothpaste cost. And so we have to have a little balance, but in the general rule, if we break it, we fix it. So we embrace and welcome all that, as hard as it is sometimes. It's not the best thing to go to sleep in, which is what I do, but nevertheless, it keeps me thinking, and it gives me lots of information about continuous areas where we need to fix, because we've got a long way to go.
Thanks, Oscar. We have a question right over here.
Hello. You've been talking a lot about the internal identity, and so much of your brand is external opinion, and by virtue of being in the airline industry, a little bit out of your control sometimes. So how do you work toward a positive external brand and employer identity?
Well, the best source of that is twofold. One is our customers choosing to fly us more often, and the other angle is kind of word of mouth. I mean, I'm never going to start a global branding, marketing, propaganda campaign and say, no. Whatever you've heard of United, it's different, we're different. We'll do that gently, and we'll do it. Again, it's proof, not promises. I tell the street all the time. It's like, I know you don't think we're going to get anything out of this, but once you start seeing the proof, and I think an example is something like what you just mentioned, Robert, with regards to during the incident that we had a few months ago, that the employee sentiment did not dip well. Our customer sentiment at the same time, while it dipped initially, it's kind of come back to its normal thing. So it's a difficult question. I don't think I'm answering it very well in the sense that I don't want to promote our brand just for the promotion aspect of that. I want you to truly feel it, and when you there's nothing more enduring than you fly us and you have a great experience, someone takes care of you on a time. It's like, I like that. Next time I fly, I'm going to choose to fly United. Not because of some campaign that tells you how humanitarian we are or how exciting I am. Whatever, it has nothing to do about me. It has to do with those 90,000 people. And if I've captured their hearts and minds, they're my biggest marketing tool and campaign, because that's who you interact with, right? Your gate agent, your flight attendant, your pilot, the person you call on the call. That's the connection. That's the lasting sort of remembrance. And you're going to remember that more than some national branding campaign of some sort. So it's more low-key than you would think.
You know, one of the things that keeps running through my mind as I'm hearing you speak, Oscar, is it used to be the case that the customer was always right, investors were sort of next, and employees were just people that were important to work in the company. And there's been this shift, and you're really aligning with it, which is that management serves employees, employees serve the customers, and if they do that, investors are taken care of at the end of the day. And it's this whole mind shift that has kind of been happening in the last 5 to 10 years that you're kind of describing.
Principled and profitable. And, you know, Wall Street folks don't necessarily like not being at the top of the list, but you have to understand that they are. It's a balance. It's, you know, in order to have something last, you have to take care of all your constituents.
Yeah.
And it starts with us, with our employees.
Yep, yep.
Thank you. We've got another fantastic question from Twitter, and I want to thank everybody on the line who's been live tweeting along with us. If you do have a question, please remember to tweet at #GDRecruit. That's GDRecruit. All right, so we've got another question for you, Oscar, and this time from Andy. This is a fun one. What is the #1 piece of advice you would give your younger self if you were just starting out in the world of work?
And it's advice that somebody gave me, and it's advice that I give to people all the time. And it's the term swing easy. And what do I mean by that? If anybody's tried to play tennis or golf, if you watch the professionals, right, it's almost effortless in their swing. And that's a particular example. And I think a lot of us early on in our careers have been embedded with all of these, you know, lean in and be this, and guys get this dark voice deep when they talk about things, and you know, you get this almost over seriousness, and you tend to, at the end of the day, be instructed to almost not be yourself. And that's just a fundamental flaw in the philosophy and direction that people are given, because you are who you are. And when you start understanding who you are, both good and bad, and start playing to those strengths, and start, you know, sort of shoring up the areas of development, it makes a difference. And it's a swing easy thing. I grew up in really hard political, cultural environments. Pepsi was my first official job, was such an intense place. It was up or out, and so you wore your suit everywhere, and you had the deep voice, and you always had this great, you know, you always had to be impressing someone. And I'm a pretty happy-go-lucky guy who just happens to have a level of intellect and connection, and you know, sometimes it was strained in that place. And I learned from there to say, you know what, I'm not going to be that. Now, I learned through personal trauma. I lost my mom, and you know, and then I just learned, you know what, I'm not doing this. I'm just going to be who I am, and if someone doesn't like me, well, you know, I'll go find something else. So swing easy, and swing easy with, you know, be careful, right? I mean, it's not just go out and, you know, you have to have some level of decorum and comportment. Millennials take some of this stuff a little too much, and I love it. But a quick thing on millennials, if I could. There's always this, you know, what are you doing about millennials? It's an interesting theory that I have, because I've been working long enough to know, and have gone through the Gen X and the Gen Y, you know, oh my God, and remember all those conversations, what are they going to do? And so what they're going to do is they're going to get married and have mortgages and have children, and they're going to need the concept of a job is a really good thing. And so life happens to those generations. Now, between that point and when they start, how do you recognize their needs? And so everybody talks about millennials every 2 years, the new challenge and all that stuff. And I fundamentally understand that. I have kids of that age, so I'm pretty close to it. But what I've also learned, and I did it at my last company, we're about to do it at this company, again, back to the simple concept of listen, learn, and then lead. I'm gathering my millennials, and guess what I'm going to ask them? What is it that you guys want here at United? Because that's the only pertinent thing. And when I did this at my last company, what they told me, it's like, this is funny, quit calling us anything. We hate being called anything. And no, we're not looking to have, you know, dispensaries in the break room and wearing shorts and long socks and ugly, dirty white shoes. It was a very different philosophy. And more importantly, what I learned from my railroad days with those folks, like, and how dare you question our desire to have ambition and drive and look for new challenges? It sounds like a bad thing when you older people say it. And so I learned a lot from that. So I'm going to, you know, conduct that same level of conversation with our folks here at our company to understand what it is they need from us and our environment and our culture. And once I've heard from them, again, listen and then learn from it, then we'll put things in a place that I think will make our millennials a little more retentive, and recruitment help as well. Again, simple human dynamic and connection. Not brilliant stuff, but effective when you do it right.
You make it sound simple. I have a feeling it's not that simple. Do we have time for one more?
I think we've run out of time.
We're running out of
but
time. Okay. I have one last question before we end, though. So, when you ultimately leave United and look back, what is it you'll have hoped to accomplish that you haven't done yet? What is the legacy you're hoping to leave behind?
Well, so two things. What we haven't done, Churchill said this a long time ago, it's maybe the beginning of the end, the end of the beginning, but we still have a long way to go. So there's just customer service and orientation and the things that we do, flying, 100+ million customers to 60 different countries, 700 flights in the air at any point in time of the day. There's eventually going to be failure. So we'll continue to work and fix on that and leave a culture of people really wanting to care about you. But frankly, the legacy, and someone wrote this to me just recently, and it really struck with me. They said, Oscar, you have an ability to make everyone feel like someone. And that's a wonderful thing for me. I heard that, and I thought, you know what? Of all the things people could say about me, I think I like that one. So to all of you, you are someone in your own lives, and you are to us as customers, and thank you for having me. I appreciate it.
Thank you, Oscar. Thank you so much.